I'm sure that many viewers out there are not even Muslim. They'll be thinking how society is taking a very crazy turn. The way the people's so-called moral compass has completely gone haywire.
I remember when I grew up, there was a moral standard. Like, in school, you were a certain way, with your elders, you were a certain way, and with your teachers, you were a certain way. And yeah, there was a little bit of naughty behavior, but there was a standard. Many, many years back, we had the kings that used to sit there and they used to bring the jester in, right? And the jester was like that clown that everyone would laugh at and ridicule, and they were looked down in society. Now the jester's become the one with the most views and the most popularity.
Before, if you have a 12 or 13-year-old daughter, maybe even a son, you never would imagine that you'd feel safe when they're up in their bedroom. But nowadays, that child could be dancing naked on a social media platform. No father, even if his daughter is 18 or 21, most of them would feel comfortable that was going on in the room. And guys are subscribing and all kinds of madness going on. I'm not ashamed to say that if a woman or a man are doing these things for camera, these most private things to get paid, that's a disgraceful, trashy thing. The kind of shift society is going into, how the most trivial kind of clowns of society, in many cases, are now being looked up as role models. And, our children or people's children are watching them, and it's a very dangerous slope they're going down.
In today's modern society, it's not just about me, myself, and I. Rather, we are part of a bigger picture. We are part of the society. We are part of the neighborhood. We are part of the workplace. The question is, how do we conduct ourselves, or how is our conduct in those environments? And today we'll discuss some of those issues with my guests, Brother Ismail and Brother Simon, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
So as you heard, it's not nafsi, 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 which means myself, 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 right? In the Arabic language. Rather, we are part of a system here. We're part of a larger group of human beings. What do you think today's impact of the people in society is showcasing? Something positive or negative?
I mean, there's always positivity, right? There's always something positive, no matter where you are, where you're from, what society, there are positive things. But I think definitely now we are seeing a large increase in things in society that are very negative. Even if you're talking from not even if I'm sure that many viewers out there are not even Muslim, they'll be thinking how society is taking a very crazy turn. The way the people's so-called moral compass has completely gone haywire.
Yeah, exactly. If you say that point that you mentioned is that take religion aside for a second. I remember when I grew up, there was a moral standard. Like, in school, you were a certain way, with your elders, you were a certain way, and with your teachers, you were a certain way. And yeah, there was a little bit of naughty behavior, but there was a standard. It seems like, as you mentioned, that standard has not even done a 360. It's gone somewhere else.
And I think also like what people are pushing nowadays, right? If you look at the social media, the algorithm, what the kind of content it pushes, because honestly, I don't want to believe that most people are like have no idea, like have this, distance from reality and no idea what's going on, and their moral compass is out of this world. I think most people actually are quite clever and know how to behave.
Yeah,
it's just that these, I don't know what we call them, but people that act like clowns or on the cost for how would you say it? They embarrass themselves.
Yeah.
To entertain people.
It's like, it's like, you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Many, many years back, we had the kings that used to sit there and they used to bring the jester in, right? And the jester was like that clown that everyone would laugh at and ridicule. And they were looked down in society.
Yeah.
Now the jester's become the one with the most views and the most popularity.
I think it's a reality. Those jesters, at least, maybe you could say they were, compared to nowadays, that could have been considered like a noble art compared to what people are doing now, right?
Yeah.
So even just yesterday, I was on social media, and also one of my sons or someone was on social media, and he was like, "What is that nonsense?" I said, "What's that?" And it was some new trend where you put a boiling hot cup of water or glass on your friend's head to see if it will spill or not, and just thinking like, to what level have people, there's all kinds of crazy. I mean, of course, as we go on, we're gonna talk about how immorality has spread. Like now it's actually like. And we probably don't even know the half of it because, alhamdulillah, we're not out there watching that kind of stuff. But you hear about these things, So to the level now where, in the old days, no matter where you are, you may feel comfortable as a father, especially maybe in certain countries where certain internet is much more open and much more, there's no real legal, I guess you could say, boundaries. Before, if you have a 12 or 13-year-old daughter, maybe even son, you never would imagine that you'd feel safe when they're up in their bedroom. Yeah. But nowadays, that child could be dancing naked on a social media platform. So, there's so many things in society now that are just like, that, are really, really, really crazy, And I don't even think you have to be a Muslim to relate to a lot of that. Even a lot of non-Muslims will be like, I'm sure, generally speaking, no father, even if his daughter is 18 or 21, most of them would feel comfortable that was going on in the room. That house, and guys are subscribing and all kinds of madness going on. But it's like you said, it's become like these people who, in reality, now we don't want to talk about individuals, but what they're doing, the concept is something which is very trashy. 100%. I'm not ashamed to say that if a woman or a man are doing these things for camera, these most private things to get paid, that's a disgraceful, trashy thing, and we pray for guidance for those people, of course, who are doing it, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim, that Allah, they're guided away from that kind of lifestyle. But those people now have not only you see those kind of people being pushed, like you said, like people, you may have those people who are on those platforms almost becoming famous like they're movie stars.
Exactly, yeah.
Or, I mean, you could also argue, does a movie star really bring anything truly beneficial for society?
Yeah.
That's another
question to have.
Reality is not really there. There's entertainment for us, but you can't say this famous Hollywood movie has changed the lives of humanity.
Exactly.
He didn't invent a cure for a disease. He's not a scientist. He's providing entertainment. But to go to the next level where people are stripping off on cameras and then or like you said, doing the most stupidest of pranks, and they've been pushed now to the level of famous people, who can quote unquote actually, for example, act or can actually play sports.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really ridiculous. And now we see the YouTube football competitions and YouTube boxing. That's almost become like a league where they have side men against somebody, whatever it may be.
Exactly.
So and some people might turn up to those matches more than actual Premier League matches or something similar, or they may go and watch this boxing match of this particular social media, Instagram or whatever he became famous on, boxing against a retired MMA fighter, more than they actually go to a professional boxing match. Of course, we're not promoting boxing matches, but we're just giving an example of the kind of shift society is going into, how the most trivial kind of clowns of society, in many cases, are now being looked up as role models.
Exactly.
And, our children or people's children are watching them, and it's a very dangerous slope they're going down.
Yeah, and I think what you said is nail on the head, and I want to kind of bring it back to a kind of a place where we can start a detailed discussion in certain areas. And the area I want to focus on now is what you mentioned about the family. Okay, as a father, you have to be more diligent on what your children are doing. You have to be more apprehensive of what's going on, and so on and so forth. So I kind of want to discuss how much this has impacted the family structure. How much has it affected actually what goes on in the net family? And the thing I want to start by saying is that the level of harm that it's causing, I think we can all agree, is very vast. And one of the things that comes to my mind is that I remember an incident where a young lady came to a classroom. She was crying. What's the problem? What's happened? My husband, and there's been a little difficulty between her and the husband. And it turned out the husband was saying, I want you to look like this Instagram model. Wow. And that's his perception on reality now, because why he's exposed to that the level of lewdness and whatever it is, and it's now his kind of foundation for what his reality should be. Yeah, his preference should be. I think that's on a micro level as well as a bigger scale. It's causing a lot of harm, and I want to kind of focus on the family unit. What areas of the family it's actually affecting? And I think if we start the discussion basically on the level of respect between the youngers and the elders, and then how that's kind of developing in society nowadays.
There's one point I want to just mention there. Like, I think, like me having Instagram, having all these like exposure, this was something me and my wife, we talked about very early on. Like, okay, how are we supposed to handle this as a family? Inevitably, when you have more eyes on you, it's going to affect your family, right?
Yes.
And I think that comes to another point where I see a lot of, unfortunately, like Muslim influencers, creators, and oversharing private life, private matters. And I think there lies a very dangerous, thing there, whereas the more eyes you have on you, the more, vulnerable you are when it comes to, these concepts as hasad, as we have in Islam, where, how would you, like jealousy?
Like
Jealousy,
envy.
yeah, type
yeah.
of envy, yes.
And this is like real, like it can actually kill people. Like this kind of, like if the envy becomes so severe, it can cause us like great harm. And we haven't even talked about other stuff like black magic and all these things that can be applied. And another thing, if we take the religion aside, crazy thing I saw, with this uprising of AI, whereas, they can use whatever you post on social media and manufacture whatever they want.
Manipulate it.
Manipulate, like create, take the pictures of your children and create like crazy images.
I've seen that actually.
Yeah.
Like, sorry to interrupt, but that just reminded me of, I think it was in Barcelona, somewhere in Spain recently, it was in the news, that some children had run home, a daughter had run home to the mother crying, because she said she'd seen and shared in a WhatsApp group online a so-called picture of her, 9-year-old, something like that, completely naked.
Yeah.
And they found out that someone, I don't know who it was in the end, but someone, was it a teacher, was it another student, but someone had done AI images of all the girls in that classroom and posted them online. So that's crazy now. And that's another thing which we often as well say to the Muslim sisters as well, to avoid posting your pictures, because I remember reading a report that there are people out there now who are purposely like promoting this kind of hijab Muslim side of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And they are purposely like looking for online images of Muslim women,
So they
and
can
then
exploit them.
They manipulate it, and they put that woman's head with her hijab and maybe a naked body or whatever it is. So this is a very scary thing as well.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing not to because let's be honest, generally speaking, they're not looking to do that to men, unfortunately. That we have to be honest that people in society, when it comes to certain things, they do always over sexualize women.
Yes.
They do take advantage of women. So unfortunately, you're going to find people that are going to do that. You're not really going to find that unless there's a particular person they want to try and ruin that person's life. So they want to make an embarrassing video saying, "Oh, look, he's naked." Generally speaking, it's not going to happen. They're always going to look out. And unfortunately, there's many sick people out there who are going to look out for the Muslims women. One, because maybe they have this hate for Islam. Secondly, this concept of the Muslim woman being covered. So they want to like create this. So it's very dangerous. I mean.
See, this danger that obviously that we're all aware of and all accustomed to, is creating a sense of tension between the elder generation and the younger generation. And what I mean by tension is that, as a parent myself, and as we're all parents in this room, I feel more tense about what my children are doing on social media. And if, for example, we have kids YouTube, right? Now, on this platform, it's been recently found out that a Peppa Pig type of show was actually mentioning some real inappropriate stuff. Like someone had made an account and actually sexualized that account and passed it off as a kid show. Crazy. So the issue is now what it's creating in terms of a struggle in dynamics is that the parents are saying, no, protect yourself, stop, come away from this technology, and stop and limit your use. And the children are kind of like, but it's society, we're involved in school and X, Y, and Z. And how can we kind of like manage this power dynamic, still be responsible parents and still teach our children to have respect for, their elders and parents, when this world is like kind of gearing us all up to actually fight at every opportunity? I mean, that's the kind of thing that I'm thinking of, how we can come away with this type of concept.
I think it's like this. It's not about being scared. Like, I don't think we're talking about this just to scare people. Don't use social media and all that. Obviously, like you said, Ismail, in the beginning, like there's always something positive anywhere. Like, it's not like nothing you find is like purely 100% negative, and that's it. I think it's all about knowing how to navigate.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned in previous podcasts, like, what is the best navigator other than Islam? Like the beautiful principles we have in Islam. Like these issues we talked about with these AI pictures, videos, all this, it would not happen. Like if we really took these Islamic principles of protect your privacy, don't overshare things, be careful what you do, what you say, what you do, everything, like it should, with just a simple principle. And I think that's the issue. I think people, when they come into these things, and the youth finding new trends and this new technology, I believe like it's not just for today's age. It's probably been like that in the history, like between generations. Obviously, maybe even like it's more emphasized on today because of the big and dramatic changes we see in just a decade, right? But I think it's all about knowing how to navigate, and how should a parent treat his children, or how should the children treat their parent. And people are looking for answers in the wrong places, I think. Again, like coming back to the beautiful principles we have in our religion, it solves so much. Like all of these issues wouldn't be there if we just accept.
I mean, you're talking like about the principle, like for example, prevention is better than the cure.
Exactly.
So to prevent something, it's better to then later on try to cure it.
Yeah.
For example, if we could say I can prevent my children from being exposed to certain things, it's better than curing them afterwards once they've been exposed to it and saying, oh, this is bad, but this is this and X, Y, Z, right? So I guess, what I'm thinking, like from all this stuff that I've seen in the transition in my own life, and when I grew up and I saw the moral fabric of society take a different shift, it's like, I'm thinking, what kind of practical steps should or could we take in order to try to shift it backwards? Now, this is a big ask, right? This is like, okay, we need to shift a whole group of individuals backwards. But, if you start with a drop of water, that drop of water then, goes out and it fills up later on. So I'm kind of looking at it like proactively. Okay, you see society is what it is. You see that the dynamics and the moral fabric of society is getting worse and worse and worse over the years. Now, I have a responsibility as a parent to try to uphold the opposite side, which is try to bring back the moral standard. And as you mentioned, Islam has the perfection of the moral standards. So now how can I now embark on that mission and instill these things in my own family, in myself and others? And it kind of reminds me of a documentary I watched where some of the founders and creators of some of these social media platforms, they mentioned that when we started out, it was like such an innocent thing, right? We making a platform that links people together. It's like, the buzz, the hype. And then we didn't realize, and I'm quoting the words of one of these founders. He said, what we didn't realize is the other flip side to that coin, which is that we've opened up the doorway for all of these other stuff to take place. Okay. And what I want to take from this little discussion he had in this documentary is that he said, my own children don't have screen time. I stopped them from using social media platforms. And this is the guy who created these certain elements of these social media platforms. So it's like, how comes we don't think from that perspective? Like, actually, that's removed these social media platforms from our children. prepare them in manners and etiquettes and morals and X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Then when they do come to be exposed to it, they're going to use it in the right way. For example, a knife is a knife, right? You can use it to butter toast, or you can use it to harm somebody. What stops you from harming someone is the moral compass that you have inside of yourself, right? So I kind of think from my perspective, it's kind of identifying the different areas of society that are going wrong and try my best to kind of mitigate those factors by instilling certain manners in my children. And I think one of the most important manners that I want to instill in my kids, and I hope to share with others, is the respect of the elders from the youngest. Because the reality is each one of us has a different level of experience based upon our age. We've seen different things because of the different transitions of time. So we're trying to protect the new generation from what we've learned from. But if they don't have respect for us, and our children and the environment and the youth don't have respect for us, how are they ever going to listen? I mean, that's the problem here, because you need to embark information on you need to share information. And give facts and figures or whatever it might be to the youth. And when they're like, "Now, bro, I don't want to listen, bro," this type of behavior, what's going to happen? It's just going to keep perpetuating and getting more worse.
I think the thing is, like you mentioned earlier, you mentioned like the fact that things start with a drop. And that's why it's so important in Islam, this whole concept of the family structure, the family unit, right? Because they say if you want to destroy a society, destroy the concept of this family unit.
That's right, yeah.
And of course, we're not generalizing. Well, we are generalizing, but there are rules to, exceptions to the rules. But generally speaking, when you see a very unhealthy family breakup, I'm not talking about maybe the parents get divorced, it's just not working, but the mother and father keep it civil between them. They don't insult each other behind the backs in front of the children. They allow the parents to see each other. It can work. But a lot of the time when you have these single mothers where she doesn't even know who the father is. So this does have an effect, because that boy or that child, especially if it's a boy, grows up without a father figure, grows up without someone. You need that kind of authority. Could you have a particular mother who's very aggressive, or she's very authoritative and it works? Maybe. But we're talking generally here. They get to a certain age, there's no one to keep them under control. They rebel, it gets worse. And this whole idea now, as well as being pushed, is you don't need to get married. You don't need to do this. So even you have so many people now, they don't get married, or they have children outside of marriage. So this whole idea of, if you don't have the family structure in there, it has a knock-on effect. So if you have these children who have no father figure, they feel broken, they feel something missing, they turn maybe to gangs, or they turn to drugs, or they turn to alcohol, whatever it may be. And then that kind of trickles on in society, where you have like delinquents, juvenile delinquents, right? Going out causing trouble.
That's right.
And it has a knock-on effect in society. So they do say that if you want to destroy a society as such, then knock out these traditional values. And that's what we're facing now.
Exactly that. And I think that's exactly what the whole idea in my mind is, try to reinstall. Because I remember, for me personally, no matter what the dynamics were in my family, as you mentioned, there's positive and negatives in every walk of life. But we had this type of unwritten rule, so to speak, which is that any of the children from any of the parents, from any of the aunts and uncles, whatever it might be, if they were seen by any of the aunts and uncles or grandparents, X, Y, and Z, there was a standard of manners that you had to uphold. And if you didn't, then that family member had the right to punish you. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And that was kind of the
discipline you.
Discipline you. Yeah. So, and this is the thing that we're missing, is that, and again, I'm bringing it back to the same concept, but is that I had this innate level of respect for my elders, which when my elder said to me, go home, young boy, stop messing around or whatever, I would say, yes, uncle, yes, auntie, and I'll go and and if I didn't, then that information would get back to my father and my mother, and then I would be, punished again. You know what I'm trying to say? Because the society was working together. And I don't see this very much anymore. Do you know what I'm trying to say? In obviously, we know in the tradition and faith of Islam, it's a lot about, it's encouraging the jama'ah, the togetherness, and working together as society. And I'm just thinking, have we lost this in society? Is this lost? Like if your child, your son, your daughter, I saw them in the mosque, for example, or if I saw them playing in the playground and they were misbehaving, would I have that level of courage to come over and say, behave yourself? Or if I did say behave yourself, would he go back to his parent and then have the parent come and tell me off because I managed their son? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I want to mention like this. From now, obviously, I'm from my country. I can only talk about that, but there's actually been a documentary about it. Talking about these family values Ismail talked about, and these family unions that are getting separated, and why we see that a lot today. Like, obviously, you talked about people not getting married, or getting married very late, or not having trust with one another, and one and another. This, when I saw it, it was really crazy talking about this. What happens when you put more importance on the individual rather than the family, right? You don't have this community. So what are the consequences of that? Like we can see today, we see elderly people being put in retirement homes, right? And they have no one to visit them. I even saw this crazy article about how they installed robot cats for them to speak with because they were so alone.
Wow.
I was like, this is going crazy.
Yeah.
And we see people, they die in their apartments because of old age or something,
and they're left there for months and
years.
weeks. Yeah, I've seen
years.
this.
We had a guy like several years. It's crazy. Like, how wouldn't where the family?
Where the family members?
Yeah,
you kind of.
And that is, we know in Islam, when we look at the teachings, we find many teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, where he actually mentions, that for example, the pleasure of the Lord is in the pleasure of the parents, and the displeasure of your Lord is in displeasure of your parents. Obviously, as we know Islamically, if the parents are commanding you to do something which is forbidden, is a sin, that's a different matter. But if it's just something that they may say to you, you can't go out. Why? I don't want you to go out. No.
Like
Islamically says no. What do you lose? Go out next week, for example.
Yeah.
So this emphasis on obeying the parents, being respectful for the parents. If we were all to implement that, society would be amazing.
Yeah.
Again, you mentioned about these people dying, being left alone.
Yeah.
They must have somewhere some family. But there's this concept of sometimes in many families, like not keeping in touch. Where again in Islam, it mentions that one of the biggest sins is to
cut ties. There's
a verse in the Quran says that the verse, if I can remember the translation, is that these people, Allah's talking about these people who are such a bad state that they will commit fasad, they will commit like mischief and evil on the land, and they will sever their family ties.
Yeah.
So this is the thing. So if you were implementing Islamic principles here, whether Muslim or non-Muslim, but let's just say, these teachings that came for the whole of mankind, if you're implementing these here, then in theory, there shouldn't be someone who can be left for months.
Yeah.
Could he be left for a month maybe?
Yeah.
Far away,
tried
to call, couldn't get there, had to wait, save money to get a train because maybe. But at least they would pick up a phone and say to somebody, I think something's wrong with a local authority or something, right? Because they will always be thinking severing of the ties.
What's really profound and interesting on the point you mention is that, as you learn more and develop more as a person and also as a Muslim, talking about myself, there's certain things you learn, and one of these things is what you learn about the importance of family. One of the maqasid sharia, the goals and objectives of Islam, is the preservation of the family. And all these rules and principles, as you mentioned, is just to uphold and preserve this unit. It reminds me of something really, for me, it was normal. And I don't, but my family were really kind of blown away. Like my uncle got sick and, I'm not there or able to go visit. So I sent some brothers, from the mosque, can you go visit my uncle? Take him some grapes, sit with him, make sure he's good. So my uncles were taking pictures of, my brother, with your brothers, and so thank you so much, and X, Y, Z. And, I was just saying to myself, this is like a standard normal thing. Like he's in the hospital. Surely someone should go visit him. Now, that's not to say that my family wasn't visiting him, because, you know, that's one thing that they do have, that level of honor and respect for each other. That's the old school values that are still present there. But the reality is that it's seen as something abnormal in society, you know? And as you mentioned, if we go back to these principles of like, don't say off to your parents, the respect and honor for your parents and obeying the parents and so on and so forth, you see that society becomes a more peaceful and tranquil place to live. And if it becomes more peaceful and tranquil to live, then the parents and the other, you know, family members who want to correct and uphold good manners and morals between the family members, you'll be more subservient to do that, right? You'll be more willing to do that. And what we see, as Ismail mentioned, is that I'll go to your room or do this, how this kick off sort of behavior. Do you know what I'm trying to say? And when that's instilled in the children, from what I've seen, it leads to these things that we see in society, because there's no boundaries. I don't listen to you. That means I'm not listening to authorities. Exactly. If I don't listen to authorities, then who's left? I'm not listening to God the Almighty, who's deserving to be, obeyed at all times. And I don't obey my parents, who God the Almighty told me to obey. And I don't obey the authority and the leaders who the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, told me to obey. Exactly. So who's left now? I do whatever I want, whenever I want. And if you listen to the music, is, one thing, is actually encouraging this rebellious nature amongst our youth. And I think that's why we're seeing this shift amongst the youth, and it just leads me on to just one thing that just popped into my head. You got this guy on social media. He's a fake, quote unquote, they say gangster, right? Put all those fake tattoos all over his face, and he's got wads of printed out money, and he's like, yeah, my G, and all that sort of stuff. And he's getting so much attention, right? And he says at the end, he's like, this is fake. I'm just doing it because that's what the people want to see. Yeah. And that really defines where we are in the world in regards to.
And what's sad is probably so many people after he says that, they will still continue to follow him, and they'll still continue to watch for his latest video.
Exactly. And I watched this other, it's like, I saw this guy. He's like a British guy, Caucasian, and he loves Jamaica. It's good. No, you can all love different cultures, fantastic. But he pretends to be Jamaican. And he had an interview recently, and I said, so what is your story? He goes, I know I'm British, and I know I'm white British, but I love Jamaica. So it's part of my persona to pretend to be Jamaican. And again, the point I'm trying to raise here is that society still... It's like, he identifies as a Jamaican, right? So because he identifies as a Jamaican and I identify as whatever I want, that's what society's pushing, right? So it's like, it kind of highlights the level of how to say intelligence, so to speak. I'm sorry to put it like that, but the level of intelligence has also decreased. It's like some other guy, he was saying, I identify as a millionaire. So he went into the bank. He went to the bank in England. He goes, I would like to withdraw 1 million, please. And the bank was like, sir, there's something wrong with you. You don't have 1 million. He goes, I identify as a millionaire. And he did a little post afterwards. He was like, so I what you identify is not necessarily the reality. But what really got me by this post is the level of intelligence, is that he's trying to say that our intelligence level has decreased as a society. That just because you identify as something doesn't mean it becomes a reality. And that reality that you are trying to present or push is actually detrimental to your health, the health of other people, and society.
I think it's like goes back to the absolute truth, right? And I remember before we talked about, in the first episode when we talked about our stories, I remember before I became a Muslim, one of the biggest fears I had was all the rules. All the regulations, limitations, restrictions. I think like how I'm gonna keep up with this. Like just look at the 5 daily prayers. Are you for real? Like fasting on Ramadan, like 30 days, not drinking and eating during the day. Come on. But as soon as I took the leap of faith, like literally, I realized like, wait, this was that all these rules and regulation was something I needed, something that actually gave me more freedom.
Exactly, that's
right.
Excellent.
The crazy thing, like people want to be free, so they free all of their whatever desires, imaginations, and they don't realize they put themselves in a bigger prison.
Exactly.
And I realized that as soon as I took my shahada, my testimony of faith, I removed those shackles, this prison I was in, and decided to follow this beautiful religion that gave me freedom, actually pure freedom, gave me navigation, gave me guidance, because that's what we really need. It's not freedom, it's guidance. And I just thought of it. I thought of it when you said like these people just identifying like whatever they want, because they have no limitation. Like they don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know what's right or wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that's going on right now, is that the limitations don't have. It's like, I wouldn't say it's infinite, but they like it's once you break one boundary, what's to stop you to go on to the next? And in fact, the nature of human beings is that once you've conquered one obstacle or one hurdle, you want to conquer the next type of hurdle, right? And that limitations and the boundaries that the faith and the tradition gives you is what keeps you grounded. But if you don't have that, then you're saying to yourself, I'm just going to do whatever I want whenever I want. And I think that what we've seen from that is, compelling. I wouldn't say compelling is the right word, actually. Contradicting is the right word to say. Contradicting beliefs and ideas. For example, I go on to the next kind of subject. We talk about obedience of the kids and the family structure. For example, the women, okay? The woman wants to be loved and taken care of and respected and X, Y, and Z. But at the same time, she wants to become, unfortunately, like the man, and take on the man's position and be more dominating and authoritative and so on and so forth. But no, I do want to be taken care of. And it's like, okay, so then the man has become more feminine and X, Y, and Z. And how do you think all of these dynamics have also added or aided to the place where we found ourselves in the society we live in?
Definitely. I mean, if you have people's roles have been reversed, or people's roles have been diluted, for sure it's going to have an impact. If the man no longer knows what it is really to be a man, and the woman no longer knows what it is to be a woman, what kind of messages are going to go down to the children, and how are they going to understand how they should respond now? And now you're in a catch-22 situation where, if you say this too much, you will be classed as misogynist.
Exactly.
And if you say this too much, you're on the opposite. Of course, there's a balance. Islam is balanced. So you can have things that are correcting things. So you can say like feminism. If someone says feminism means I want women to be treated fairly, I want women to be treated as they should, you can say, okay. From that perspective, Islam says that. The Prophet Muhammad peace be upon him said, the best of you are the best of you to your wives, and I'm the best of you to his wives. The Prophet Muhammad said, when on one of the last sermons he did, where he's laying down rules and regulations for mankind. This is a very important speech. Or his final farewell sermon, he said that to be good and have good and fair treatment to women.
Yes, I.
So, this is here in Islam. So, that's fine. But when you say now, no, there's no difference between a man and a woman, that's a problem, because there's a difference between women. Are women and men equal in the sight of the Almighty as human beings? For sure.
For sure, yeah.
Allah says in the Quran, إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل تعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم, that we have created you from male and female and from different tribes and nations,
The best of you in the
so that you may get to know one another. Indeed, the best of you are the ones who are the most righteous, the most aware of the Almighty. So here it says clearly, who's the best? Is it black, white, British, American, Arab, non-Arab?
Male, female,
color, status, money, wealth, rich, poor? No, it's who is the closest to Allah, who's the most righteous. So Islam tells us that women have to be respected and they are equal human beings. But are they equal as in 100% equal in the sense of
biology?
Yeah. Generally speaking, you go out into the street now, you and your wife are walking down the street, people want to come and attack you. You're not generally going to say
most men nowadays might hide behind the woman, right?
you're not generally going to you're not going to say to your wife, right?
Push her in the way.
You're not going to say to your wife, hey
man up,
men and women are 100% equal.
Yeah.
Go and fight those
You
two
take
guys.
this,
You take this one. I'll go take a
Forget
back
two
seat.
guys. Go and fight that one guy.
Yeah.
No, if that particular woman happens to be a champion kickboxer and he's an average guy, not really, maybe she has a chance. So we're not denying that. But the reality is that's not going to happen, right? So there are some jobs or some things physically, like why then do we not see women willing to step in the boxing ring with Mike Tyson?
Right.
Or why don't we see the same weight class woman fighting against men in boxing? Why did we see when there were the US official US
That's the thing now, by the way.
professional football team of United States of America, I think it was. They are they're the international American USA soccer football team for the women. So one of the best in the world. Professional young women played against Wrexham FC, retired, which is like a division, I don't know what it is, 2 or 3 in the UK.
Yeah.
So not really even professional, maybe semi-professional. And a lot of them were retired, like 45 and above. They beat them 15-0. So we're not making fun of the women, but why did that happen?
Do you know?
Because the physical abilities of the men outweighed the women.
Yeah.
So when you start to tell people that no, that's not the case. Women and men are absolutely the same and 100% equal in every single aspect you can imagine. That's just not reality.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not disrespect to women. It's just not reality. If someone came and said that men can generally multitask as good as women, we'd say that's nonsense. We know women are very skillful at multitasking.
Yeah.
That's something positive for women. That means women are very intellectual in that regards. And men find a lot harder to multitask. Am I then disrespecting men? No, I'm stating a fact that we know. We see it in everyday life. We know it scientifically, biologically, and that's the way it goes. So when you start to mess around people's minds and say to them, like, no, you can't say that. And of course, there's another, I don't want to go for too long, but there's another level where people become on this red pill thing where they start to disrespect women. And this is Islam, we know Islam is the middle path.
That's right.
It's neither to this extreme or that extreme. So if you're being too willing and say, yes, everyone's fine, everyone's the same, you're going too extreme. If you're going like these red pill guys who start like disrespecting women and calling them, the H word and the B word and all these kind of things, and saying that, all women need this and all this woman needs is a good man, or as in like, certain, if you get what I'm saying, they need they need a sexual encounter, then they'll shut up. All these kind of verbal that you see people using, this is another extreme. Islam is in the middle.
In the middle.
Recognize both genders for what they are and then live together. Everything runs smoothly.
And this is really like, I say this often to many people. Going back to the moral shift in society. I grew up, and everyone has again their own experiences, but I saw my grandfather and my nana, right? And I honestly, like, we read about the way the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was with his family, and we say this is the pinnacle of romance and fine treatment is top level. Now, if I'm going to say in terms of me with my own eyes seeing somebody in a romantic relationship and seeing it as like the best, I would say it's my nan and my grandfather. I remember we've got a family video where my mum got married and my father got married, and there's a moment where the camera pans to my grandfather and my nana. And you see the look into both of their eyes, the way they look at each other, it makes you cry. Because the level of love they had for each other was like something, till his like dying moments, he was like, your nana, your nana, your nana. And the reason why I mention this is because the household, regardless of all the problems inside of it, because every household has problems, run smoothly. And the reason for that is my nana valued him as a man and he valued her as a woman. So kind of those ideals growing up is what I saw. And I always said, I want to be like, like this and X, Y, and Z, but we have many faults and flaws. But if my grandfather said something, not because he saw her down or lower, she would honor and respect what he said as the leader. And if you speak to a lot of women, and they did a survey, I can't remember the exact survey, they said that, would you like this and like that and so on and so forth. Many women, 90% said yes. Most women want that strong male leader They don't want the opposite. And those who get the opposite, normally those relationships don't last very well. And that's kind of what's happened. Like you said, if you want to break society, break the household. That's what we see now shifted. Like I can't see that around me very much anymore, where we have these beautiful role models to look up to and say that this is a good household where the husband is honoring and taking care of the woman, and the woman's happy for that, and she's honoring and taking care of the leadership of the male. And again, it comes back to the fact that we in Islam acknowledge the differences people have. And it doesn't make them less or more virtuous. Rather, what makes them more virtuous is the religion that they hold, right? And I always used to say this to the kind of some of my students. They used to ask me, "Oh, you know what, Islam and women?" And they always this as it's a misconception among the world, Islam and women. I used to say to them that, for me personally, the greatest gift a woman has in terms of just physical, the ability to have a child. This is something mind-boggling. The ability to have the pains, the aches, all things that you're going through, and still have mercy and love and compassion for the child that just caused you all this pain, and yet you have the most mercy towards that child is something phenomenal. You are like the kind of, you give life to society after the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah.
That is unique and profound. It's not, tell me what, okay, I'm a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Okay, wow, fantastic, great. It's good. No one said it's not good. But you've just brought a life into this world. I can't do
Like
that.
a walking miracle.
Yeah, it's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's actually a miracle.
Crazy.
I don't know if any of you were there when your children were born.
All of them.
Yeah, but I delivered some of my children myself, and I'll tell you, it's an absolute profound miracle. And this incident for me, it changed the dynamic of my life slightly. And when I had my daughter, it was my first child, and I witnessed the whole thing, and I was there. I rang my mum straight away and I said, "Mum, I want to ask you a few questions. How was it to have me as a baby?" She said, "You kept me up, this one, that one." And the very, I was teary, I was crying. I said, "I apologize for everything I have done to harm you. Every moment I spent outside of the house later than a minute than I should have. I'm sorry." Because the reality is, this is a miracle. But what are we doing in society now? We're devaluing women to say she has to be a sexual object or objectified to have some sort of value and status, and she needs to have money and whatever it might be. And I just find this surreal. I find it just mind-boggling, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, the greatest gift a woman can bring to the table is that each one of us came from a woman. That's the wonderful thing about, the Islamic principles is perfection, because it comes from God the Almighty, right? And the one thing that I was saying, that I was pondering over is, when the woman delivers her child, the very first thing they do is the midwives, they put the child to suckle from the mother. That milk that the woman produces is stage by stage accurate in terms of what the baby needs. If it's hot outside, it will be cool. If it's cold outside, it will come through warm. Its water content changes based upon the mood of the baby, and if you see the scientific studies on it, it's
also it's a antibiotic.
Exactly, antibiotic.
It's like the baby is having antibiotics to prepare it before it gets sick, or even when it's sick, it helps it to get better.
Exactly. And no matter how much science tries to replicate this with baby formula, they cannot
it's
match
never the
it.
same.
Yeah.
And this is like, when you think of this is something profound and unique. Like, come on, that's call a spade a spade. This is fantastic. We don't have this as males, right? And we can also argue that the women in Islam have a whole chapter dedicated to them. Okay. Now, whereas men, there's no chapter of the men, so to speak, right? So what we're saying is that you are a unique creature, and you have unique features, and you are have a very high status. Why is it that they're just subjectified to being objectified, if we can say that, right? And they're happy to accept it. Like, I think there's a new trend at the moment, or a new platform at the moment, where women go on there, they just have it all off and they're becoming millionaires overnight. When did we get to the point where the value of the woman just became an object? Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because for us, I
think it's become almost like to counter the disrespect of women and misogyny, they've gone on a complete other side now where I can just strip off and do whatever I want to do in front of the camera because I'm a woman, it's my body. So it's gone the complete opposite way. They haven't come in the middle to counter the misogyny. They've gone to some another level of some people, of course, have gone to like a complete other level.
And think about it, like when we all have gotten questions about what about the woman in Islam, what about this, what about that, right? And I think what the issue here is they don't really think further than the question that, okay, they look at Islam or the woman in Islam from the lenses or from the glasses of what we see in the world right now. But who says that's right? You know, like you talked about all these incredible like biological features of a woman that we men don't have. Who put them there? And surely, like, if you see actually how Islam treats women, and you see like wait, some aspect, it contradicts actually what we see in the world today, but it doesn't mean that Islam is wrong. It just means that what we're seeing right now in the world, it's different from what our Creator wants us to create to treat each other. It's not about the woman, like how we treat women. We talked earlier in the episode about how we treat parents, how we treat children, how we treat neighbors. All of these things have become, like you said, it's like diluted. There are no borders, there are no lines, there are no respect, there's nothing. And I think come back to, and don't look just at, oh wait, this doesn't, it's not like how I see the world or how I perceive the world. Well, I would challenge people if they hear this, and not Muslim and Muslim, if you feel like sometimes that what Islam presents, and you feel like, wait, this contradicts what I believe, take a look at what you believe and take a look at what the consequences are from what you believe.
I think this is a profound point that you just made, because if you look at combining the points you both have made, Ismail mentioned about feminism, the right type of feminism, so to speak. Back, I can't remember the date, but there was a Council of Cancun, I think it was called like this. They had the European, leaders at the time had a meeting to discuss whether a woman was actually
It was actually a meeting of clergymen,
yeah,
of high-ranking, Christian priests. It wasn't even, it wasn't even politicians. It was
high-ranking. Whether she's a woman is like a soul.
Is she a human?
Or is she just an
object?
They basically had, they basically said they were trying to discuss, is she human? Is she some kind of spirit? Or is she an animal?
Or she's an animal, yeah. So in the end, they said that she's a human, but a soul that couldn't be saved, right? So this whole concept, it developed, went into what is known as a rule called femme coverture, I think it's called, right? It's where the woman, when she was married, she became a husband's property. She became like Mrs. whatever the husband's name was. So this taking of the husband's name was actually a means of her slavery. She became his property. Any money she earned became his money. Any inheritance she was owed became his. She had no legal rights. It was all under the husband. And in UK law till in the 18th century, a man could actually sell his wife. Actually, wow. It was still written in law. Now, the reason why I want to highlight this, this is where the feminism movement started and originated from, right? But what I'm trying to gain from this is that the acceptance of this concept in society, even though we have the other side that are trying to combat it, but still to this day, this practice is practiced. You take the name of the husband. And that's origins and roots was a form of slavery. And I'll give you an example of this. Like, there's a deeper story that I can maybe on another podcast go into. My surname was actually the surname of the slavers who enslaved us, and they brought us to the UK. So it's actually not even my own surname. So it was actually, you became the name of the one who owned you, right? And still to this day, it's like seen as an honor for the woman. Oh, I'm Mrs. Clark, or I'm Mrs. But Islam doesn't allow that to happen. She still retains her name, the father's name, her identity.
Exactly. We know as well, that the woman in Islam, she maintains her name, and that also helps because it means that her property is hers, as we know. Islamically, you get married, you can't take your wife's property. If she has money, you can't take her money. She decides to contribute, that's different, but you have no right over her money, over her wealth, over her property. We know back then women, until only recent times, couldn't own a business. They couldn't be involved in the government. They couldn't vote as such. They couldn't own land, couldn't own property. Whereas in Islam, back from the time of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he established the teachings and the Quran from Allah himself that women can own property, they can earn a living, they can be part of the government. Prophet ﷺ, after he died, Aisha was a very active part of the shura, of the council, of the Muslim affairs.
Not even that, if we go a little back, sorry to interject, his wife Khadija.
Of course, yes.
She was
a businesswoman.
So a businesswoman, and she ran a very successful business.
And I think something that's very, very, very pertinent and very potent, should I say, is the fact that if you look, we know this, we all come from different backgrounds and sometimes some different countries, and even here or anyway, wherever you are, we see that most people who are becoming Muslim do so, are women. Like, for example, I'm working in the Dawah Center. When you look at if you look at 100% of Muslims who became every month Muslim, it's always 70 or 80% of them are women.
Yeah.
Why? If Islam is some religion that oppresses women, why would women, and we can go back to the UK, when they did this report in this research called Faith Matters, where they checked from 2000 to 2010 or something like that. Every year, approximately 5,000 people becoming Muslim, and they happen to be, the average were middle class white women who are university educated in successful careers. So hang on a second, where's the thing like, oh, they became Muslim because they have nothing else in life,
and they're oppressed,
she was uneducated,
exactly.
That mentality of, they're from that background, so they're kind of closer to those other foreign people, that mentality people have, right? These are women educated and in good careers. They're the last people to be easily tricked to join a religion of oppression of women. And they become Muslims. Many of them wear the hijab. So this shows you something. And that's a trend throughout the world. So this nonsense now that people are still trying to push out about oppression to women, basing on certain countries in the world where some women said, I wish I could take it off. That's long gone. And it's a very foolish kind of argument now, where we have people by the hundreds of thousands yearly embracing Islam. If it's 10,000 in the UK alone, majority women, what about the rest of the world? Becoming Muslim, mostly women of their own choice. No one's forcing them to wear a hijab and tying them to the kitchen sink like they like to portray. These are women doing it themselves. So this shows us something, Do
you know what I think it shows here? And this is again back to the beginning of the discussion, which is that society now glorifies people who are unintelligent and somewhat stupid in regards to how they portray themselves on the TV. If I act stupid, if I pretend to be stupid, I get more views. I eat, silly foods and do silly things. This gives me more, followers or whatever it might be. But if you look at it reality-wise, the clever, the smart one, the intelligent one, especially from the women, would say, I don't want to be objectified. I don't want to be someone's object or someone's property or desire or something they do. And I want to have respect and honor for myself. And I don't want my children looking at me or finding a picture of me when they grow up of me in a lewd manner. And I think this is where you look at it, where it's the smart and wise decision. If you really take it into consideration, everybody wants to have peace. Everyone's looking for happiness. You're not going to find happiness and peace in anything that goes against how you've been.
And I think a lot of it, I know we have to end soon, but I think a lot of it is materialism. I saw a clip recently that came up of a particular person asking a lady, I don't know who this lady is, but I'm assuming from when I heard it, she must be some of those women we're talking about, go online or whatever. So he was saying, aren't you worried that when you're going to grow up, your children are going to come across some of this content of yours? And that her reply was, they can cry in a Ferrari.
Yeah, they can cry in a Ferrari.
So this is how material and how ridiculous we've become, that you can do anything you want, or you can be as immoral as possible. It doesn't matter what you do or who you are or the things you do. It's if you have a Ferrari, if you have money,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. And this woman was someone who was going to be, I think she was going to be a lawyer or something. So she left that to do that. So this is, I mean, we could probably go on for hours and hours, but I guess, you know, the whole point of this show, Inspirable, is we want to share information that's inspirable to people. They can be inspired from.
And food for thought, right?
And all these problems we've been talking about in society now, everyone can take inspiration from Islam. And they can, all these societal issues are solved
Exactly.
within Islam. It's a fact. You can search yourself. You don't have to take our word for it.
Exactly. So there you have it. As Ismail mentioned, maybe you have heard what you've heard and you want to research further. You want to dig deep in. Maybe you want to challenge some of the concepts that have been put across. Then we invite you and we encourage you to research, to have an open mind, to have a sincere heart, and don't just be another object in society, rather contribute to where you are with a good, positive contribution. So there you have it. Till next time, we hope to see you again and join us again on Inspirable.